Welcome to Salon for All and Voice for All Network Television.
Mes salons Famboulden, on a couché en Cabo. It's a message come from United for Salon in collaboration with Salon for All and Voice for All Network Television. And also for me well body people in Charlie Taliban. One sick don't come with a call corona. Say ain't okay if you black or you white, it is spread it all over. So mama, papa, let me take the precautions. Not a party business, that it end is for caution. So number one for the wash you on, it's up. Now they touch your nose, now they touch your eyes, and now they touch your mouth. When you sick, now for stay na us. You want cough, now for cover your mouth. You want sneeze, now for cover your nose. Make we help for safe salon. Salon now we on, no place like home. One sick, now come with a call it corona. Say, ain't okay if you black or you white, it is spread it all over. So mama, papa, let me take the precautions. Not a party business, that it end is for caution. Say, one sick don't come with a call it corona. Say, ain't okay if you black or you white, it is spread it all over. So mama, papa, let me take the precautions. Not a party business, that it
Welcome to Salon for All and Voice for All Network Television.
Mes salons Famboulden, on a couché en Cabo. It's a message come from United for Salon in collaboration with Salon for All and Voice for All Network Television. And also for me well body people in Charlie Taliban. One sick don't come with a call corona. Say, ain't okay if you black or you white, it is spread it all over. So mama, papa, let me take the precautions. Not a party business, that it end is for caution. So number one for the wash you on, it's up. Now they touch your nose, now they touch your eyes, and now they touch your mouth. When you sick, now for stay na us. You want cough, now for cover your mouth. You want sneeze, now for cover your nose. Make we help for safe salon. Salon now we on, no place like home. One sick don't come with a call it corona. Say, ain't okay if you black or you white, it is spread it all over. So mama, papa, let me take the precautions. Not a party business, that it end is for caution. Say, one sick don't come with a call it corona. Say, ain't okay if you black or you white, it is spread it all over. So mama, papa, let me take the precautions. Not a party business, that it
Welcome to Salon for All and Voice for All Network Television.
Mes salons Famboulden, on a couché en Cabo. It's a message come from United for Salon in collaboration with Salon for All and Voice for All Network Television. And also for me well body people in Charlie Taliban. One sick don't come with a call corona. Say, ain't okay if you black or you white, it is spread it all over. So mama, papa, let me take the precautions. Not a party business, that it end is for caution. So number one for the wash you on, it's up. Now they touch your nose, now they touch your eyes, and now they touch your mouth. When you sick, now for stay na us. You want cough, now for cover your mouth. You want sneeze, now for cover your nose. Make we help for safe salon. Salon now we on, no place like home. One sick don't come with a call it corona. Say, ain't okay if you black or you white, it is spread it all over. So mama, papa, let me take the precautions. Not a party business, that it end is for caution. Say, one sick don't come with a call it corona. Say, ain't okay if you black or you white, it is spread it all over. So mama, papa, let me take the precautions. Not a party business, that it
to Salon for All and Voice for All Network Television.
Mes salon fambul dem, on a couché en cabo. This a message come up from United for Saloon in collaboration with Salon for All and Voice for All Network Television. And also from the well-body people them. Charlie! Taliban! One sick don't come with a call corona. Say, ain't okay if you black or you white, it is spread it all over. So mama, papa, let me take the precautions. Not a party business, not attendance for caution. So number one for the wash you and it's up. Now they touch your nose, no. Now they touch your eyes, no. And now they touch your mouth. When you sick, now for stay na us. You want cough, now for cover your mouth. You want sneeze, now for cover your nose. Make me help for safe salon. Salon now we on, no place like home. One sick don't come with a call it corona. Say, ain't okay if you black or you white, it is spread it all over. So mama, papa, let me take the precautions. Not a party business, not attendance for caution. Say, one sick don't come with a call it corona. Say, ain't okay if you black or you white, it is spread it all over. So mama, papa, let me take the precautions. Not a party business, not attendance.
Welcome to Salon for All and Voice for All Network Television.
Mes salon fambul dem, on a couché en cabo. This a message come up from United for Saloon in collaboration with Salon for All and Voice for All Network Television. And also from the well-body people them. Charlie! Taliban! Say, one sick don't come with a call corona. Say, ain't okay if you black or you white, it is spread it all over. So mama, papa, let me take the precautions. Not a party business, not attendance for caution. So number one for the wash you and it's up. Now they touch your nose, no. Now they touch your eyes, no. And now they touch your mouth. When you sick, now for stay na us. You want cough, now for cover your mouth. You want sneeze, now for cover your nose. Make me help for safe salon. Salon now we on, no place like home. One sick don't come with a call it corona. Say, ain't okay if you black or you white, it is spread it all over. So mama, papa, let me take the precautions. Not a party business, not attendance for caution.
Greetings, fellow Sierra Leoneans and viewers beyond the Sierra Leone community. Welcome to Salon for All and Voice for All Network Television. I am your humble servant, Khadija Tijan Nabi. Tonight I have with me in our studio Mr. Chernoh Alpha Ba. Mr. Ba is an award-winning journalist and political activist based in Freetown, Sierra Leone, a long-time activist in West Africa. He is the chairman of the African Socialist Movement of Sierra Leone and has maintained a consistent voice in the struggle for national democratic rights. He was also parliamentarian candidate in 2012. Mr. Ba also happened to be the author of the Ebola outbreak in West Africa, corporate gangsters, multinational, and rogue politician. Those are three individual different books, which we'll elaborate a little bit further later on. So welcome, Mr. Ba. I want you to take this opportunity to introduce yourself to the world for the few that may not know who you are, and also I want us to handle this interview today, or this discussion or debate, as more of a holistic approach, meaning that many of the things that really affect Sierra Leone or Sierra Leonean, when you look in the continent of Africa, we always get similarity. So having said that, let's make a pause here and I bring you in. For now, you say, introduce yourself, and then we land to today's interview. Welcome again, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. It's a very great pleasure for be on the show, and this time the first time for do online television and social media. larger discussion. So thank you very much. It's a good opportunity. Looking forward to the discussion.
It is a pleasure to have you. So, like I mentioned earlier, with some of the books, them way you basically be you don't pull out there where you're not one of the author, because when they try for handle this in the layman terms, so that way that mommy self na kutongo or Congo mat kids go able for forgets the message where we they discuss here today. So, having said that, now we start first with you being Mr. Bar being an author. Now we start first with that.
Yeah, I decided to write books as an extension of me journalism. Growing up, I always, want for participate in the discussions and debates around good governance, around democratic rights, around issues where you allow the greater majority of the people to realize common good. So I also think, for me, I see the media then as a platform or an instrument where I will use to articulate my own ideas about what it takes to get a decent society, a good society, a good country, and how the greater majority of people, when able to get the opportunity for express themselves, also feel represented through some of the things what they say. So in expressing my views, I always take into consideration the aspiration of people, the greater majority of people. So that passion for representing people, the passion or desire for getting a good society, a democratic society, which have individuals who live freely and use their human potential for engage and participate in national development, but necessarily being constrained by new barriers within the development. So I don't think that so media engagement for me now the platform and a tool for articulate some of them, and also as an instrument for hold leaders accountable, to also help leaders to see within the greater majority of people will vote them in, where then the claim for represent also the thing, because for the most part, leaders intend for be far away from people. They always drive tinted vehicles and all that, so you don't even recognize the people's faces. So you therefore get a group of people, at least we will tell you what you feel about your policies, what you feel about your actions and activities. So for me, that drive me into writing first in newspapers, and then I extend that writing into books, hoping that this by putting my ideas in print, I decide to engage a greater majority of people within Sierra Leone and outside of Sierra Leone about the African problem, and more so the Sierra Leonean question, the Sierra Leonean problem, and all of that. So my desire for search for solutions, from thinking through ideas and articulating those ideas and laying some kind of paradigms and solutions about what I think, hoping that other people will challenge them, and also out of that some kind of consensus about ideas around national development to emerge. So that's basically the books that they're about. Ideas around change.
Excellent. You mentioned leader. To you, from your own perspective or point of view, within your definition of a good or a great leader?
You can say that question again.
I say you earlier mentioned about leader or leadership skills. Then I further ask you, say, from your own perspective or your own point of view, what thing you would how you would define a good leader?
This is not a very broad question. We could spend the whole
Night.
time to talk about it. But basically, what we talk about qualitative leadership, leadership differ in various contexts. But what you need to look for in when we talk about leaders in a political sense, or when it comes to the question of governance, is about listening to the people. It's about being tolerant to debate, to national conversation, where they allow dialogue. When you get 1,000 people in a room, you get 1,000 voices. So the leader in that context will be somebody who will listen to the plurality of voices within the room, and then allow the differences, because human nature, God created the world in conflict, because you get day and night, happiness and sadness. So these opposites, now then basically they make the world go round, where you get night, you get daytime, you get sadness, you get happiness, you get so in tools, man and woman, stuff like that. So these conflicting situations that you say, there is no point in life. The greater majority of people go, everybody in society will think one way and act one way. So as a leader, you got to understand that. You got to understand, say, you the shepherd a group of people where for the most part, therefore disagree with you. And the question for you is, what is the common good for the society? What is the legacy that you want to leave? What do you want to be remembered for? So when you want to live your life and rule people and govern and lead people and then be that leader where everybody will left for, where history will consign you another page, the negative page, or somebody will say, oh, this person was accommodating. And what will cause that? Now, when you become a visionary somebody, and for making you get a vision and implement it, you got to get a high level of tolerance. You got to be immune to, the kind of criticism where they reduce you to the petty kind of person where will make you become, because when you're in a position of authority, you get immense power. That immense power. If you're a president, you control large powers, and those powers involve the police, the army, the jail, the courts, the fire force, all the institutions of oppression are under your control. So when you look at even fly before you go on for use fire force against that kind of thing. So what makes the difference is how you able to manage these resources, the oppressive resources and the human and material resources at your disposal for making life a legacy that will remember you for good leadership. So for the most part in the African context, I think the greatest problem we will deal with is a question of nepotism, where you begin favor, you begin abuse power, then you look at this enormous power where you get. Police all mandate at your disposal, the army is at your disposal, the jails and they at your disposal. Oh, and now you appoint judges, now you dismiss people, now you give them jobs. So for most part, people know in this kind of situation, especially in the African context, society, the state becomes the defining question of livelihood. And they determine would I get a job, would I get a job, would I not get a job, would I get a high paying job, and would I not get a high paying job. So, even get people who could tell you when it go wrong. So you need that tiny segment of a population where could always draw you to attention that, oh, things are going wrong. And if you decide to become aggressively, they use these instruments, this enormous power at the disposal, then the leadership will be able to in the balance, the negative side of it, then go outweigh whatever good intentions you get. So it's not a question of intention, it's about performance, how you use this enormous power and the kind of legacy where you want for left. So for me, it all comes down to the question of tolerance. You get a high level of tolerance to be accommodating and to also be immune to some of the petty things, the temptation for use these instruments of oppression just because you get them at your disposal. So it's a large question anyway. You get multiple dimensions.
So we will go back to Dande. Similarly, when we talk about journalism, activism, somehow have a symbiotic relationship, if I can use that term, with imprisonment through using the seditious libel oppression against them to the extent of someone can label them as treason, either it be because of the obvious or critical evidence against the government of the day. What's your take on that, on how the government can attach that to abuse of power? What's your take on that?
I know you're in the larger part of the question because
the larger part. So now I repeat, I say I've been kind of like try for put several things together and get your point of view, which is the journalism, activism. I say somehow I can refer to both as a symbiotic relationship, if I may use that term, meaning that many of time either then you go get again, then put in a prison or jail or use the seditious libel for oppress them, you understand, because of maybe obvious or critical evidence against the government of the day. So having said that, what's in your take on that unfortunate things surrounding journalism or activism when it comes to the African continent as a whole, not only Sierra Leone?
Yeah, I hope I read the question quite well. For some reason, I don't know within the lines seem to be scrambled. But if the question is libel laws and
so I did try for
I don't know if you could repeat
journalism,
maybe,
activism.
sorry.
It seemed like you did get interruption, eh? Now, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, seem like you. Okay, I think so. You did get like a interruption at line, eh?
Yeah, I get that. I don't know why.
Okay, you did hear me now clear? Can you hear me now? You wanna repeat time?
Yeah, repeat them, please.
Okay, so basically, I've been to say, in terms of journalism, activism, right? Somehow, they refer to both as having a symbiotic relationship, right? If I may call it that, wherein they can end up go na prison, or they can end up get the label as seditious libel law, or they oppress them because of either they get critical evidence or obvious evidence against the government of the day. And when we talk about the African continent and these leaders, when they say then get somebody way up front and ready for basically expose the obvious or critical information, then at the end of the day, whether you're an activist or you they practice journalism, at the end of the day, you can end up in that category or that unfortunate situation. So I ask you, say, what's in your take on that, not only in Sierra Leone but Africa as a whole?
Yeah, all over Africa now, as you rightly say, and this I think like global phenomenon now. Last year alone, by December 2019, we get over 250 journalists or people where we call activist journalists were actually involved in activism, or they use, or activists where they use journalism as a vehicle for express them or execute them work. And these are individuals, 250 were by December 1, were in detention right across the world. And majority of that figure, again, they within the African continent. So, and you will find this in places like Tanzania, in places like Cameroon, in Eritrea, in Nigeria. You know, we get so worried when they run Sahara reporters go to Nigeria, you know, very leading, powerful anti-corruption news website run out of New York. They go to Nigeria, detain. So you get this all over. Sierra Leone, you see the recent arrest of journalists, the detention of activists. So this is like continental phenomenon. So the question is, which is responsible for this increasing imprisonment and detention of journalists? Now, you see, say all over the world, we get incompetent leadership, basically, to sum it up, incompetent leaders who are not able to live up to debate, and mostly people, governments who cannot handle, who have lost the debate on public policy. When governments they actually lost the debate on ideas, because governance it should be this thing about ideas, is about a contest of ideas. The opposition largely can involve not just political parties, it involved a larger sector of civil society, the media, organizations, trade unions, professional bodies like bar associations, journalists, press unions, and all this. These are the larger sector of opposition in a country. But so these groups of interest groups then always get to come out in opposition to governmental policy whenever they feel say that policy that they affect their own interest or their own membership. For example, if you pass legislation written for more free expression, journalists can definitely get to come up against you. No, it will articulate these ideas. So you see, and this is a continental, a global phenomenon. You see Trump in America, you see Bolsonaro in Brazil, you see Boris Johnson in the UK, you see in an African context, you see George Weah, Liberia, you see Madabio in Sierra Leone, you see Adama Barrow. So you see this continental scale, you see leaders and almost where you go, we represent the same kind of culture, of intolerance and aggression. And part of it comes to the question of the capacity of these leaders, their approach to national development, their inability to accommodate dissent, their inability to accommodate divergence and disagreements. These disagreements, there is always going to be a disagreement on how to run a country. What is the right path to national development and progress in a society? So basically, there is not going to be any situation where you get a compliant citizenry, 100%. There is always going to be opposition and dissent. So because this new type of leadership, ineffective leadership, we get on a continental and global scale, you find out they are intolerant to debate. And now within they don't resort to now legislations, they use legislations, new laws, new institutions or old institutions in a new fashion for muzzle democratic rights, for suppress citizens, because nobody knows how to talk, nobody knows how to say anything. And now you cannot do that because now we get an active citizenry. And what you don't make the thing more problematic, we get the liberation of the institutions of mass communication. You don't understand it. So now you get new media technology. This technological revolution also don't disarm dictators. They don't make it impossible for dictators to operate the same way they operate in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It now means that this style of governance, this style of oppression, a new one. But what it don't make it now more difficult because you get a young population. In Sierra Leone, for example, the majority of the population, they're between 18 years, they're below 38 years. Okay? The larger sector of the people who vote, they're between ages of 18 to 36, 85% of the voting population. And then why majority of them, almost 90% of this voting population or 95% get access to simple telephones and then hooked up to global media, hooked up to social media. So the advent of new tools of communication, the liberation of the instruments of mass communication don't allow people enough to engage into civic dialogue in a new way. And this is a problem for leaders who don't get ideas. We don't know how to handle debate. We don't lost the debate on public policy. The only resolution to this new culture of civic engagement now for use the police and the army and the judiciary and institutions. So that this make you see now all over the world this whole cliche about fake news. You see, where Trump say fake news. Cameroon, Paul Biya, we don't do for how many years? We say fake news. Nigeria, they say fake news. But now you go read fake news that salon. You read fake news that like so they all talk the same language. But then you get civil society activists and journalists. They say lie. We know they allow the same thing now. They say would they subvert traditional media? Would they subvert this one dictatorial tendencies? We know they agree. So you see the invention of new channels of communication. Like example of what you are doing is so phenomenal, it's so great. This was impossible in the 1970s, where then new one party ruled in Africa. In the 1960s, when something happened, Chernoh would pass the BBC, focus on Africa. And then again, if you got a good, satellite telephone, I they use. When the person they talking, you recognize the voices. So this thing has changed. So African leaders and also leaders nowadays to understand that they are faced with a new phenomenon, a new terrain of development, and therefore live up. That requires that they have to develop a new culture and approach to governance. It's not going to be the same. You cannot muzzle people anymore. The earlier you learn about these things, the easier it's going to be for you to govern your people. And the more difficult it is for you to accept it, the more difficult it is for you to hone down your policy. And then it's going to be a frustration for you. because then you always go to blame citizens. You always go to turn the citizens to criminals because I mean you could begin to arrest people for doing nothing, and then you arrest them. You don't even get law for charging them. You arrest them, detain them. You don't even know what you arrest them for because you've arrested them out of anger. You've arrested them because they're using new tools of communication to challenge the verdict of dictatorship. So you find out that it is a problematic phenomenon for new dictators right across the globe. So to answer your question, you get increasing imprisonment of activists and journalists when the only crime we don't commit right now is use new tools of mass communication for express ideas around good governance and also for desire and aspire for hold the leaders them accountable. So the situation of Sierra Leone is no different from the situation in Liberia, in Gambia, in Cameroon, in Nigeria, because at this time, they're the same kind of leaders, and just like Trump, just like so you don't need to look far. You will just see all the pattern. So it's interesting to watch this kind of development and reaction from citizens. But the encouraging partner that we are no longer in the 70s or 60s. Times have changed. So the mentality of governance has to change. The earlier leaders learn that they are in a new period, in a technological revolution, then they will understand that they also have to revolutionize their thinking about governance. They have to get rid of that archaic method of governing people. It's not going to work.
Absolutely. Make we talk about, I will call refer to as brilliant, sneaky way of how politicians then can, the method of approach in terms of dividing the nation, either it's been through tribal lines, regionalism, you name it, an effort for netting gain their own or accomplish their goal. What do you take on that?
Well, yeah, like this also an extension of what we talk about. It all comes down to incompetence, and it comes down to the question of poverty of ideas. When you get leaders who cannot think, who are not innovative, who are not visionary, they have a problem in terms of how to legitimize their control, how to exercise power. And because they cannot build a national consensus around how to govern, they resort to sectarian methods. And those sectarian methods include the fragmentation of the population, the balkanization of people, for divide people into small compartments. And in an African context, in real situation, it becomes region. If they cannot do it region, they retreat to ethnic groups. But the problem with that kind of situation, for example, now you have a lockdown in Sierra Leone, as an example, because we always refer to that as we own country. We can't shy away from that. When commodity prices go up, you understand, it's going to affect everybody.
Absolutely.
You don't see. When you get a disease outbreak, it does not select which political party supporter is going to affect. Now, you will see politicians, when they are in power, they steal from public resources and they say, party supporters, I don't give you 6 million leones, I don't give you 2 million leones, we're going to lockdown, we don't get. That is not the solution. You understand? And it comes down to a situation where national development, we got to decentralize with thinking and also understand that what we need in a country, now basic economic and social development across the board. Once a leader is able to deliver the common good to the people, good roads, electricity, healthcare, social service delivery is done without party consideration, without regional consideration, nobody cares about which ethnic group, because if they're able to go to school, able solve your problems or live as a citizen in the country and you get access to the right and the protection where you're supposed to get from the state, you don't think about those differences. But now people want to hang on to parties where they support party leaders because they are ethnic patrons, they are ethnic leaders because they're in power. They got to ask themselves the hard question: where bad grass go up, if it go up only for one ethnic group or the other. It's going to go up for everyone.
Absolutely.
Okay, now when they lock down everyone is going to suffer the same consequences, the same hunger, lack of access to water, lack of access to electricity. When SALCAB or when EDSA take power, we will then take electricity. They may take electricity for one tribe, number one ethnic group. It's going to be a national power cut, or the entire city will suffer the same blackout. And whether you vote for the party in power or you don't vote for the party in power, you're going to suffer that blackout. So the question is, how do we as citizens going to work to ensure that any government we get, whether we vote for that government or not, whether we own ethnic person or not, we ensure that we get 24 hours electricity. We get, effective access to healthcare. I think say one benefit of the current health crisis is the fact that African leaders need for land very seriously more than ordinary citizens. Because, for example, if any of the politicians in a salon sick right now, whether we used to go fly Canada, England, or America, for come seek healthcare. Now, if they're sick in a salon, they're not going to say for long come for healthcare. They just have to use Chernoh or Connaught Hospital. So that's not the reality check. So the question is, how do you have to, even when I don't destroy the capacity of our countries then to provide the common good for the people, the social service for the people, to their own detriment. Now where the entire world, every country don't lock down the borders. If an African president sick now, any African country now, they are on their own. If they have no efficient healthcare in their country like Sierra Leone, now no problem for them. So this is the reality. So now if this crisis continues beyond 1-2 years, how will African governments survive when they don't use, if they're sick and get here that, they have to fly to London or to Paris or to Germany or to the US. Now if they get serious health crisis, which is possible for every human being, who's going to fly go? They're not going to fly go. So what I'm trying to say is that the ethnic way of governing people is even at your own detriment, because all you need for do as a leader, provide the services, healthcare, education, good roads, and all of this across the board. Then the question of whether you ethnic people, but these ethnic people where they organize, say now we are from this region, now we didn't have power for ensure to marginalize other people don't hold power. So this will be 50 years, we don't left again. The question is, what are you doing with political power? What are you doing with the national resources, that trust that people have given to you? There is nowhere in history where one group of people, one ethnic group of people will succeed to marginalize the rest of the other groups forever. It's going to end. And it's a risk, in fact, because no matter how you marginalize people, what you will do now, people will support you, will be against you. And whether these groups of people, they marginalize them, they agree with each other, you're going to force them into some kind of unity against you. And before you know it, you're in the minority. You can win. And that's the other thing. So it's suicidal to even take that role. It is in the best interest of any African politician or leader that's in power for build a national consensus, for take other groups along as a national project. Governance is a national project. It's never an ethnic project.
Absolutely.
Ethnic projects do not lead to anywhere. They are genocidal, they are suicidal, and they not even serve the interests of the ethnic patrons where they spearhead that kind of agenda. That is, the earlier we also learn that, the easier it is to govern our people.
Absolutely. Let me talk about power struggle. Many times we see even little as some community organization or religious organization, political organization, of course, leaders in prestige position, or they can feel miserable because of power struggling or lack of the correct leadership skills. What do you take on that in regards to this power struggle? What do you think say they cause this in most African leaders?
Well, because for the most part, politics don't become a means of survival. It's not the thing. It's not about an avenue to serve people and leave a legacy, create an impact in the country, and be remembered for your contribution to humanity. Now, if you look, most of the people, politics in our own context, especially in an African context, in a place like Sierra Leone, for example, majority of the politicians are not able to function effectively outside of governance. They then come on power, they are poor, they are starving, they are jobless, they cannot produce anything, they don't, because then the politics and power becomes a do or die game because it's a question of survival. For example, some of we when we criticize public policy, you know, somebody in a government they say you want full brain now what? So that to the extent. So when it becomes an issue about jobs, about daily bread, I mean your ability to live, to drive a car, most of these people in power, they've never been exposed to anything. Their first point of exposure is being appointed a minister or in certain government corporation. That's when they travel. That is when they fly first class. That's when they sleep in a good hotel. So, so that's a danger because then what that means to them is that they will do anything in their power, including murdering people, to ensure that those opportunities and benefits that they are enjoying will not go away. Because the moment they come out of power, they cannot fly first class, they cannot sleep in the hotels they used to sleep in. You know, they don't have access to the people they used to have access to. They don't have access to the kind of vehicles they have. So this poverty is not just ordinary people, it's poverty of the political class. They are poor both in ideas, they cannot function outside of politics, they have no means of survival. So I think that are one key criteria why our politics is becoming extremely bloody by the day. You know, your access to high-paying jobs is how close you are to the party that's in power, to the people who gets elected. So even within the party system, within party, with a fight over who should lead, we have this inter-party conflicts because everybody wants their own person to lead because their person leading will eventually appoint them into high-paying jobs. Very recently, we published details of salaries of political appointees that are so outrageous. You have people being paid 80 million leones, whereas civil service workers are paid 800 leones. You see the gap. And what wouldn't qualify that person for getting a high-paying job is their relationship to the party leaders who are in power. So we have to have a situation where people can function in national, you know, can contribute and function in a country based off their qualification and their contribution, not based on their loyalty to parties and party leaders. Because once we allow, and people can also professionalization of the national service, where judges can be appointed and they can serve regardless of who is in power and who is not in power. When their term of office is done, they renew it by a popular mandate, seeking that mandate from the people. So when we introduce methods of recruitment, we take into consideration appropriate qualification, you know, competence, and recruit people correctly and appoint them and pay them appropriately, not because of their loyalty to party. This tension, both within parties and in between parties, go reduce. Yes. You know, because political context by nature are also you know, heated up. But beyond the elections, people should be able to cool off. But why can't they cool off? It's because they've been denied the opportunities of the big dining tables, the high tables. Most of these guys, most of the people who are, you know, who've been there in high table yesterday, they are now spectators of new players in the high table. So they are dreaming that nostalgia of the first class, the high class hotels, you know, access to resources, access to good wine and all those kinds of things and parties is no longer there. So they dream of getting there again. Whereas those who have newly arrived there are saying, hold on to this kind of enjoyment for the next 50 years. So it's not a question of, so this question of survival is I think, in my opinion, the key trigger to the bloody nature of political context, you know, debates. So you know, they even get ideas. I'm saying, are we on Tories? When I give you a chance, they don't give you a chance. APC or SRPP, they don't give you a chance. So it becomes toxic. So the question is, what is this chance?
Yes.
What is the chance? It's about chance to loot. It's about chance to enjoy. It's about chance to offload the national, to share the national wealth. And then the question is, what has that chance got to do with the living conditions of the greater majority of the people? You go to the southeast, it's the same as the north. You go to the western area, people have housing problems, they have healthcare problems, they have poverty. You know, it's just growing. The indices on poverty and economic, they're so abysmal. So what you have is the changes in the new People waiting at power now, they were as broke as ordinary people. Now they are enjoying a new lifestyle of those who were previously for the state. After all, when we publish, for example, salaries, outrageous salaries of new political appointees, say, oh, this we inherited. This is how we met it. So the question is our own fund to loot. So when you talk about anything that takes away that from them, it's like you are, oh, you're there against me. So we don't mind for even take a caterpillar and drive them against anybody. We say this enjoyment will they get now, we know get them. So we have to have also politicians. We have to ask ourselves, what can you do outside of politics? What is your qualification? What is your function? What have you been doing? If you say you're a doctorate degree holder, is that true? Where were you working with that? What have you accumulated? How were you surviving? And what is your lifestyle now compared to your lifestyle 10 years before you were in power, 5 years, or even a year before you were appointed? So these kinds of things, these survival questions is deep problem.
Absolutely. Well, so what you would say the consequences or repercussion of a leader or those assigned in critical position giving blind eyes to critical issue of any nation?
Well, history don't show we. In the end, for the time that it lasts, you could think say, you are basically winning, but you are not winning because no matter how long it takes, you're going to vacate, you're going to leave. You can't, and increasingly as they pay deaf ears to people's complaints, you close your eyes on abuses where they happen and all of that. That is when even people who sympathize with you or who are in empathy with you, go begin distance themselves from you and say, no, I cannot be part of this kind of mess. And increasingly, what that means is that increasingly you are becoming unpopular, and you're in your process to force people to accept you. You abuse power. You continuously now marginalize people. Then before you know it, you have narrowed yourself into one small corner. That's how dictators end up. Dictators are the very unhappy people, because that's when they come out. You see them always with guns and military. As they become more dictatorial, that's when they intensify military around themselves. Then they use military power now to intimidate people, because then they should say, oh, this person. So when you look at dictators, really, they live a pitiful life because they always have to surround themselves with these brigades of army, increasing brigades all the time as the level of oppression they increase. So they become miserable. And then they leave office, they become more miserable because even the people who will help them to oppress people now with disaster. So you find African leaders who retire from power, they are unpopular even among their own parties. They are unpopular even among their own friends. They tend to have no friends. They become isolated and deserted because they never did anything where touch their actual lives, where people remember themselves. But they are good leaders, examples of good leaders from across the world who don't need the actual kind of bodyguards where you could see military and as if somebody who is leading a military brigade to war. So if you ask me, really, the repercussions are just self-isolation, more than corona kind of isolation. This is traumatizing for even the leader, because then the question is, oh, Alma hate me, Alma not like me. That is when you begin to feel that everybody hates you, but they don't. It's your life, it's your attitude towards governance, how you use power, how you abuse the instruments of oppression. You use them against people. People are going to, shy away and also resist you.
Okay. Make we visit you March 15, 2020 article titled Concealing Fiscal Costs, How Sierra Leone's Single Treasure Account Leads to Unauthorized Public Spending. Under that heading, you also get additional sub-heading where read the president's decision to implement a single treasure account and his order to centralize all government revenue mobilization and expenditure in the hands of his finance minister, Jacob Jusu Safa, create a non-transparent and unaccountability mechanism in the management of public finance and national revenue allocation. Make us speak on that, sir.
That at the third, we're going to do a series. We do an investigation into Madabio's government over the last 2 years. One main thing where people vote below for now on a platform of change, supposed change, and talk about new direction, anti-corruption crusade, and all of this. So leading up to the 2 years, we decide for say the thing we be shocking at that with all this so-called centralization of single creation of a single treasury account, then we see inflation still they happen, the currency still they collapse, the loan they lose in value. So we begin to wonder, say, there must be a problem somewhere. So one way of looking at it, let's look at revenue mobilization and expenditure of the government to see exactly what is going on. Because if you don't centralize all government expenditure in one account, you will expect, say, frivolous expenditure will not reduce. And if frivolous expenditure reduce, then you will generate more revenue. But then it gets to a point where there were complaints about regular payment, timely payment of salaries and all that. We said, no, this doesn't look right. So basically, we did a 6 months of investigation into the Sierra Leonean economy and various aspects of governance as a whole. And we decided to look at the payroll and government expenditures, tracking government expenditure. Then we realized, in fact, what has happened is that the wage bill has increased because eventually Madabio and his group of people who are now in power have decided to reward their party supporters, key party supporters, with high-paying jobs. So we map out this. So in fact, what we've published so far is not even up to 10% of the information, but the series will be trying to run for like 6 months. But we did 3 weeks only because we go weekly. Every week we release one. So that one is actually the third one. We tend to look at within the single treasury account. Then we find out, in fact, the mopping up of the finances don't allow, since they don't close down all MDA accounts and then give the finance minister the authority for spend money and hold money, that government they spend money now, people they know how this money they go. An example, so we call it off-budgetary expenditure, and one way we about lose money. Money then where government they spend, we know they're not the budget, we don't know put on the budget, we don't know get even a legitimate approval for. And not we don't must say this, when you look at the audit report, there are issues of budgetary unauthorized expenditure. We even see map out example, we illustrate that example by looking at the funding. The finance ministry, they give money about 15 billion euros in 2 months. The office of the first lady. The office of the first lady is not a governmental institution. It's not a statutory corporation. There is nowhere, institutionalization of the office of the first lady now Siakoma for startup, but it's not really an institution where forget money from government coffers. So now we see in this Madabio Swipes case, we see direct funding from the consolidated fund. And what makes it more problematic than the fact that it's the office of the president that was writing to the finance ministry asking for funds, for money to be issued to the office of the first lady for carry out. It's so outrageous. So, but this series, the way publications that we try to interrupt them for hold on because now the corona madness don't distract the whole thing. So we are hoping that with the end of the corona crisis, that we will able also reignite the debate on the economic fiscal policy, basically for examine, which we try to get out. Why is it that since BO came to power, there has not been a solution to inflation? Why has the wage bill increased? And we don't find that the finance ministry argues, say, they don't recruit more teachers. Like now, there are few days ago, they talk about 30% increase in teacher salaries, where it just feels like a drop in a small raindrop in a mighty ocean, in the Atlantic Ocean. When you check the aggregate of teacher salaries across the board, it's not even commensurate to the balloon, to these millions and millions when they pay new political appointees. You get, for example, the financial secretary alone, they get over nearly 90 million rooms. Then you get communication officers, the president's nutritionist getting over 20 million euros. So, so really the problem is still there. But why we publish this now for engineer a debate on economic policy? What is the difference between Madabio's economic policy and the economic policies of the previous government? Whether there has been any changes, and what are those changes? Or if there are no changes, what is responsible for the escalation of frivolous spending? So that will try to get at.
Wonderful.
But we get tons of information around this.
Okay. I want further read that another line where basically I want back up with another question. For the 2-day luncheon ceremony of the Hands of Our Girls campaign, we collected documents confirming the disbursement of a total sum of 3,116,000
3 billion,
sorry, 3,116,755,000 leon provided by the Ministry of Finance to the First Lady's office. Interesting.
That are just a tiny example for illustrate what we talk about unauthorized spending. That are illegal funding. In the first place, the office of the First Lady not supposed to get money from the Consolidated Revenue Fund. And up to now, we expect, say, there should be an explanation. In a country, even in other countries, then Parliament should even call the finance minister or finance minister officials to ask them on which instrument then stand for give money like that. 3 billion in just 2 days. But then we also state, if you read further, you see, we track this expenditure in 2 months alone. We fund the activities of the First Lady's office right across the country. In 2 months alone, the finance ministry give 15 billion, over 15 billion loans to the office of the First Lady. This is not money they use for print bill. This all over Salon where you're going to see this Hands of My Girls billboards and
correct
communication and all these things. So basically, the funding, there are 3 dimensions to it. One, the office of the president writing, requesting this money on behalf of the First Lady is illegal. Secondly, the use of Consolidated Revenue Fund for fund of the First Lady also unauthorized. Issues of nepotism and corruption.
So,
and now the illegality of it is what is more alarming.
Yeah. So back up what you say, I further read officials in the president's office, in particular Bokari Momo 4, wrote on behalf of the president's secretary to the admin and finance office of the First Lady, confirming the allocation of the state fund to the First Lady's office. So many Sierra Leoneans go wonder where they get impression say this Hands of Our Girls, the First Lady, we don't make it clear say imminent get funding or grants from friends them or other goodwill ambassadors them. So it's surprising that go ahead, sir. Come on in. Go ahead, sir.
You're right. There was question, or there were questions about the source of funding of the Hands of Our Girls campaign. This is not to say that First Ladies do not have the right to do campaigns and charity programs.
Correct.
You can raise funds from NGOs, but in this case, what we're interested in is whether this office or the activities of the First Lady is actually receiving money from the Consolidated Revenue Fund, from the national budget, from the national revenue, from the country money, from governmental revenue. And we get documents. In fact, we publish, if you look at publications.
Correct. Yes, authentic.
Reported and documentary evidence. Documents speak for themselves. And nobody has denied this evidence. The officials are involved. And not only that, like I said, this is not a fraction, a tiny segment of the evidence for sure. The receipt of this one. There is more evidence. But unfortunately, we're not able to continue these publications for now because of the coronavirus. And we intend to continue this for demonstrate various facets of the corruption that has been happening in the last 2 years. And this nothing where the Africanist press spend 6 months to investigate and collect documentary evidence to demonstrate the new methods of graft, the new methods of corruption, the sharing of the national resources among party officials and friends and relatives. So there are various dimensions.
Another article dated March 8, 2020, you draw different analysis. One focused on the president's monthly nutritionist, and it's read, the monthly pay of the president nutritionist alone is twice as much as the annual salary of a typical secondary school teacher, and also twice the monthly pay of a senior lecturer in the University of Sierra Leone. Interesting.
The president is paying the nutritionist in salary. in salary, monthly salary, the money they pay the nutritionist per month, if they pay one teacher for a whole year. You understand what that means? 1 month salary of one person, they pay the teacher. And why that important? Because this government talk about free quality education. And they talk say, we don't increase government expenditure now because they don't recruit more teachers. If that is the case, how much are you paying teachers? Now, they talk about 30% increase in teacher salary. This not even take teacher salary to 2 million euros. So, which means at the current rate, with the current 30% increase, even the nutritionist of the president is still capable of paying one teacher for a whole year inside 1 month. We don't even shake. You don't understand. So the question then becomes, what is the transparency or why migrantia important? Madabio in his manifesto, the SLPP's manifesto, identified these problems as some of the problems we don't lock down the economy of Sierra Leone under the Kuruma regime.
Correct.
And he made a commitment to address these things once in office. And they've spent 2 years, they haven't done so. So, but apart from that, again, what we found is that they have escalated the problems rather than address them. And that is why that one, and then you begin, if they say, oh, the nutrition is important, then how can you pay nutrition? It's more than you're paying a university, 2 times you're paying a university lecturer.
Yeah.
So that is so absurd. And not only that, then the question is, who is this nutritionist? What is the qualification of the nutritionist? And is this nutritionist an actual nutritionist or just a party faithful who then just decide to create some kind of a fictitious position just because so there are other dimensions.
Interesting. Interesting. And many will agree with you with the statement saying that if the teacher, then they make the nutritionist, then why the nutritionist for earn more than the teacher where they make the nutritionist or the doctor, the lawyer, or even the president?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So not only that, then the question, apart from that alone, the question is this nutritionist a real nutritionist?
Does it exist?
No, whether the nutritionist get the qualification for being so defined,
yes.
Or whether I just call this nutritionist because we're not getting that position for girl, I just want to create for this position so that we get, I will justify what the pay and salary.
Excellent.
So these are all questions where we investigate. So there are layers and layers and layers of nepotism. The key question here is political compensation. We call this political compensation jobs. So political compensation jobs, now they don't balloon the wage bill to over 45% within just the 2 years with Mother Bill and the SLPP come to power. And this is not just a critique, it's evidenced by the documents where we see. We're not reading here, so we're reading this based on the evidence in front of us that we've collected for 6 months. And like I say, we not even publish here up to 10% of this evidence of various departments, because it's not way they are across departments and agencies, and it's so mind blowing, unbelievable. Where me to read this evidence and look at the thing and look at the manifesto and look at where we've come from, I'm like, oh, this country, how are we going to address some of these problems? So it becomes such a difficult challenge, a headache, even reading that, looking at these things. And, it's absurd.
Absolutely. So make we do some balance here, because in terms of like comparison, many go look at you as so well. As you know, we society nowadays, like I say now, look at as a holistic approach. It's not only Sierra Leone the effect, but the continent of Africa as a whole. Wherein that, so when you stand for the truth, whether it be the previous governments, the current, or the future, then they malign you as being, oh, he is the supporter of the Sierra Leone People's Party, he is the supporter of the All People's Congress, and not say, or some can even put you in the category of being controversial, you name it, or all type of name other than the name where really you stand for when a patriotic Sierra Leonean. So having said that, and many of we believe say, many Sierra Leonean, if not all, believe say, government na continuity, you understand? Wherever that one they left off, when you come in, you forsake from there and get the interest of the country and the citizen as a whole. So having said that, no government's not going to be perfect. But if you were to compare in some of the weaknesses of the then government And this government, as one of your book, I believe, say you write about the Ebola. Why don't we talk about that? Waiting inspire you, waiting being put you to say, okay, now write about this Ebola. What do you think about the then government, and you compare that to the now government? Come back in, sir. Seem like we get a freeze. Something happened to Mr. Ba in device, so in a patiently wait for it. And so we'll take a quick commercial and come back right away. Thank you. Welcome to Salon for All and Voice for All Network Television.
Mes salon Fambulden, on a couché en cabo. It's a message come from United for Saloon in collaboration with Salon for All and Voice for All Network Television. And also for me, well body people. Charlie, Taliban. One sick don't come with a call corona. Say, ain't okay if you black or you white, it is spread it all over. So mama, papa, let me take the precautions. Not a party business, that attend is for caution. So number one for the was you and it's up. Now they touch your nose, now they touch your eyes, and now they touch your mouth. When you sick, now for stay na us. You want cough, now for cover your mouth. You want sneeze, now for cover your nose. Make me help for safe salon. Salon now we on, no place like home. One sick don't come with a call corona. Say, ain't okay if you black or you white, it is spread it all over. So mama, papa, let me take the precautions. Not a party business, that attend is for caution. Say, one sick don't come with a call corona. Say, ain't okay if you black or you white, it is spread it all over. So mama, papa, let me take the precautions. Not a party business, that attend.
Welcome to Salon for All and Voice for All Network Television.
Mes salon Fambulden, on a couché en cabo. It's a message come from United for Saloon in collaboration with Salon for All and Voice for All Network Television.
Patriotism isn't about our leaders. It's not about the political parties that we love. It's about the love, pride, and dignity of our nation. In 1999, I made a documentary film called Cry Freetown about the bloody civil war of my country, Sierra Leone. Somehow, the film attracted the attention of the international community, and they came to our aid and helped us restore peace. A few years down the line, I made another documentary film called Return to Rwanda, which shows what happened when a nation turns on itself. Hutus versus Tutsis. Very, very bloody civil war. And today, 2018, my country, Sierra Leone, is blindly strolling towards tribal war. My brothers and sisters, let me tell you, that will be a big mistake. It will be worse than the bloody civil war we had. And let me tell you this, no politician, no political party is worth you shedding your blood for. Yes, you can fight for your country, but not for politicians or for political parties. Put Sierra Leone first. If anything goes wrong, it's not the politicians or their loved ones that will pay the price. So I want you to think, fellow Sierra Leoneans, as we are having this mounting tension, these growing tensions, I want you to think that whether you are Mendi, Timini, Limba, Creole, Madingo, Kuranko, Fula, Yalonka, whatever you are, it's Sierra Leone first. They don't say what tribe, they say what country. Let's think and put Sierra Leone first. Please, my fellow Sierra Leoneans, we might have been lucky when I made Cry Freetown and we got support. We might not be so lucky. So let's don't go down that road. Don't let the politicians play you. For some of them, this is a game. Now it's time you take control of the game. You play them. You make your choice. You choose wisely. But don't fight each other. Let us be our brother's keeper. Thank you. Patriotism isn't about our leaders. It's not about the political parties that we love. It's about the love, pride, and dignity of our nation. In 1999, I made a documentary film called Cry Freetown about the bloody civil war of my country, Sierra Leone. Somehow, the film attracted the attention of the international community, and they came to our aid and helped us restore.
All right, and welcome back, everybody. We run a commercial for Giwi, a reminder of the late man, the advice we Giwi, a Sierra Leonean, we, okay, this is the wrong one. Welcome back, everybody. We run some commercial with an advice of the late man, Mr. Samora, where Idigiwi as Sierra Leonean, things the way we for stay away from, we go promote national cohesion. Once again, we get with the wonderful Mr. Ba with we tonight. We all the joint voice for discuss relevant issue. Come back in, sir. And also you've been the actually say something until you get a slight interruption. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Yes, I don't know how we've been stopped. You've been asked a question about labeling, right?
No, I think so. We've been to talk about I've been wanting you. I believe say many Sierra Leoneans believe strongly say government na continuity, and if you were to make comparison, you being a journalist and during the previous administration and now administration, everybody must get weakness. So when you compare the two, and if we can revisit some of the weakness of the then administration or the then government, within will be some of those weaknesses then, and also many aware of the book where you been come with this Ebola book. So for some of we will not get the opportunity for read waiting at their book day about, and waiting you gather during the administration day.
Well, for people who know me and don't listen to me and follow me work for the last at least 10 years where the APC didn't power, and when I was didn't power, then, and this includes even the larger sector of the Sierra Leonean media, will run interviews with me in the may have been spokesperson of the National Democratic Alliance and leading up to 2012. I also contest against the APC Namakeni, in which the results of Christian Atop overall challenge puts me second for a parliamentary seat that I did not eventually get. But why I preface me response to you in that point that my position in saloon politics I don't articulate them very clearly, both verbally and in my writings, in both the books and also in newspapers, that me think say the two-party monopoly don't destroy the possibility of development as alone. Okay, that one I want to articulate that I see no differences between the APC and the SLPP as far as are concerned when it comes to the national question. Then, if you ask me for compare between Aneskoroma and the current government of Madabio, it's too early for begin running with that comparison. But I would say we see similarities and also greater differences in terms of how they operationalize power. Similarities in the sense that this whole question about when They say, you don't sack this person. They say, APC been doing the same thing. You know, a friend just reminded me to this day. In fact, even in the rhetoric, now the same thing. They say, they say, well, I know they give you a chance. Then APC time again, they say, now we don't time this. You understand? So the same kind of complaints between APC and SLPP, even in terms of programming. Somebody just told me, they say, Chernoh, look no more. They say, APC talk about free healthcare. They were back and talk say, then now free education. So almost the same thing. And you can, so these are some of the similarities. But then for me, what is shocking, now the fact that, or not shocking, what is interesting, now the fact that the SLPP of Madabi talk about the new direction. Basically, what that literally is supposed to mean, now a departure from how things were in the past for the last 10 years. We all oppose Anes Nkrumah and criticize Anes Nkrumah. I mean, a frontline person in the critique of Anes Nkrumah right up to the last day when the APC they come on power. In fact, the SLPP were in power, so today, publish in the newspapers or newspapers and we support them, publish almost every article we have in the right hand and they republish them. When I put on the African, when you look at the Africanist press, you will see 80% of the content over there content we criticize the APC and Anes Nkrumah right up to the last day of the election. We even talk say Samura Kamara was a bad candidate, must not be given. If a vote for Samura Kamara would be a vote for a third term for Anes Nkrumah. So that's to the extent of which we criticize the APC. So when Madabio promised the people of Sierra Leone a new direction, and then when you look at what we published in the month of March, those 3 articles again, you put them side by side with the performance of the APC, you see no difference, basically. So the question is, what in the SLPP don't do in the last 2 years will become a fundamental difference, you know, because we say free education, the APC be the saying, we have do free healthcare. so these are the difference.
Now, patience with Mr. Bao, it seems like they get some. In the meantime, I want also gain another one where a trip down memory lane of another wonderful speech by Madam Basita Michael.
Okay, I've criticized the APC.
Oh, you don't come back? Would you take a quick break and come right back, yeah?
Okay.
All the long-standing problems still entrenched in our society, we have added another problem, which is making things even worse, which is taking us backwards and not forward. And what is that? It is the seeming policy of division and exclusion, marginalization of a certain group. That is not good for business. The political instability and tension is not encouraging investment. Division on tribal lines does not consolidate peace. It perpetuates resentment. Now, yesterday, in the opening statement of our leaders, we were inspired in so many ways that we saw that our leaders, for the first time, admitting to faults and willing to take responsibility. But we also see that there is a big gap between rhetoric and reality. We are preaching peace, yet we are undermining those institutions that foster peace. We can give countless examples, but I don't want to bore you right now with examples. Let me just mention a few. You cannot preach peace and you're sacking people who are guaranteed with security of tenure under the Constitution and the statute. You cannot preach peace and you impose a speaker on parliament against the majority party in parliament. We cannot preach peace when it seems like appointments are being done on tribal lines. We cannot preach peace when we are depriving access to justice of the hearing of
Let's allow the minister to respond to those issues you've raised.
Yeah, so Dr. Blyden, thank you so very much. You have raised very fundamental issues. Some of them quite startling revelations for me. Shell shock at hearing them from you. You will be
Minister of Communication, I did also.
In the surveillance and contact tracing team. As a Sierra Leonean who's always stood up for this country in material moments.
Let's allow the minister to respond to those issues you've raised.
Yeah, so Dr. Blyden, thank you so very much. You have raised very fundamental issues. Some of them quite startling revelations for me. Shell shock at hearing them from you. You will be
Minister of Communication, I did also.
In the surveillance and contact tracing team. As a Sierra Leonean who's always stood up for this country in material moments like this, you most honestly welcome. I can arrange a meeting with you, with the EOC team members, so that you can share some of those insights you have. I mean, this is a war we are into. The enemy lurking out there is an invisible enemy. With people like you who have other eyes that ordinary eyes can't see, we welcome those insights. You know, so at this point, I don't know as much as you do, but we are quite happy to debrief you so that it can help our surveillance and contact tracing arrangement. Thank you so very much. I know you will graciously take me up on my offer. So you talk.
Let's allow the minister to respond to those issues you've raised.
Yeah, so Dr. Blyden, thank you so very much. You have raised very fundamental issues. Some of them quite startling revelations for me. Shell shock at hearing them from you. You will be
Minister of Communication, I did also.
In the surveillance and contact tracing team. As a Sierra Leonean who's always stood up for this country in material moments like this, you most honestly welcome. I can arrange a meeting with you, with the EOC team members, so that.
Let's allow the minister to respond to those issues you've raised.
Yeah, so Dr. Blyden, thank you so very much. You have raised very fundamental issues. Some of them quite startling revelations for me. Shell shock at hearing them from you. You will be
Minister of Communication, I did also.
In the surveillance and contact tracing team. As a Sierra Leonean who's always stood up for this country in material moments like this, you most honestly welcome. I can arrange a meeting with you, with the EOC team members, so that you can share some of those insights you have. I mean, this is a war we are into. The enemy lurking out there is an invisible enemy. With people like you who have other eyes that ordinary eyes can't see, we welcome those insights. You know, so at this point, I don't know as much as you do, but we are quite happy to debrief you so that it can help our surveillance and contact tracing arrangement. Thank you so very much.
Let's allow the minister to respond to those issues you've raised.
Yeah, so Dr. Blyden, thank you so very much. You have raised very fundamental issues. Some of them quite startling revelations. You will be
Minister of Communication, I did also.
in the surveillance and contact tracing team. As a Sierra Leonean who's always stood up for this country in material moments like this, you most honestly welcome. I can arrange a meeting with you, with the EOC team members, so that you can share some of those insights you have. I mean, this is a war we are into. The enemy lurking out there is an invisible enemy. With people like you who have other eyes that ordinary eyes can't see, we welcome those insights. You know, so at this point, I don't know as much as you do, but we are quite happy to debrief you so that it can help our surveillance and contact tracing arrangement. Thank you so very much. I know you graciously take me up on my offer. So you talk.
Let's allow the minister to respond to those issues that you've raised.
Yeah, so Dr. Leiden, thank you so very much. You have raised very fundamental issues. Some of them quite startling revelations for me. Shell shock at hearing them from you. You will be
Minister of Communication, I didn't also.
in the surveillance and contact tracing team. As a Sierra Leonean who's always stood up for this country in material moments like this, you most honestly welcome. I can arrange a meeting with you with the EOC team members so that you can share some of those insights you have. I mean, this is a war we are into. The enemy lurking out there is an invisible enemy. With people like you who have other eyes that ordinary eyes can't see, who welcome those insights. You know, so at this point, I don't know as much as you do, but we are quite happy to debrief you so that it can help our surveillance and contact tracing arrangement. Thank you so very much. I know you graciously take me up on my offer. So you talk.
Let's allow the minister to respond to those issues that you've raised.
Yeah, so Dr. Leiden, thank you so very much. You have raised very fundamental issues. Some of them quite startling revelations for me. Shell shock at hearing them from you. You will be
Minister of Communication, I didn't also.
in the surveillance and contact tracing team. As a Sierra Leonean who's always stood up for this country in material moments like this, you most honestly welcome. I can arrange a meeting with you with the EOC team members so that you can share some of those insights you have. I mean, this is a war we are into. The enemy lurking out there is an invisible enemy. With people like you who have other eyes that ordinary eyes can't see, who welcome those insights. You know, so at this point, I don't know as much as you do, but we are quite happy to debrief you so that it can help our surveillance and contact tracing arrangement. Thank you so very much. I know you graciously take me up on my offer. So you talk.
Let's allow the minister to respond to those issues that you've raised. Yeah, so Dr. Leiden, thank you so very much. You have raised very fundamental issues. Some of them quite startling revelations for me. Shell shock at hearing them from you. You will be
Minister of Communication, I didn't also.
in the